And your new man is not hard, it's glorious. Why? Because we're starting from the glory of God. If you're involved in relationship with God, you're surrounded by His glory. You're surrounded by His majesty. You're surrounded by possibility. That's why David was a man after God's own heart, because he explored relationship with God. That's why Caleb was a man of a different spirit, because he had a mindset frame. He had a majesty frame. That was his mindset. God is for us, they will be our prey. That's a majesty frame for how he saw things as a warrior. And Abraham was the friend of God. Daniel was a man greatly beloved. Why? Because they all had something about them that was who God was for them in that situation. And they understood that everything was relational. So God is always training us in majesty. He's training us with His mindset. We are redeemed from legalism, the law. So let me finish reading this to you. This is Galatians 4:1. As long as the heir is a child, he doesn't differ at all from a slave, although he's the owner of everything. But he's under guardians and managers until the date set by the Father. So also we, while we were children, were held in bondage under the elemental things of the world. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth His Son, born of a woman, born under the law, that He might redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption as sons. Because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of His Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Therefore you are no longer a slave, but a son, and if a son, then an heir through God. The whole adoption ceremony in Jewish culture is not about this person isn't our child, but we'll take them into our family and we will call them our child. That's not what adoption means in the kingdom. Adoption means that a son grows up as a much-loved child and grows up in the house of the Father, and the Father sets them all kinds of tests and things to do and watches over their development until that child becomes a much-loved son, a fully mature son, completely trusted. So the child learns to trust, and then they get to a point where they are trusted. Yeah? And when the Father fully trusts the Son, He calls the whole community together. And He has a big feast, and in the square, everyone's feasting and enjoying themselves. There's a little platform, and the Father brings the Son onto the stage, and He looks out across to them, and the whole village community falls silent. And the Father says, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. Listen to Him." If you do business with Him, you're doing business with me. If He signs a check, it is as though I have signed a check. He acts for me, He thinks for me, He speaks for me. This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. And the whole community adopts the Son in the same way that they've adopted the Father. That's the ceremony of adoption, is where the whole community, and I've seen this, I've practiced this in churches that I've been part of. When guys that we are discipling and equipping and developing, I've practiced it in apostolic movements, teams that I've been part of. When we've been developing sons, in the faith and teaching them how to be a son of God and how to be a son in the house and so on. And when that son is ready to become a father, in our next apostolic conference for our network, there's always a place where we bring these guys onto the platform and we say, this is Rajid from Bangladesh. This is who he is. This is what he's learning. This is who he has become. And we are setting him in now to learn to become an apostolic father in the network. So Rashid will take responsibility for this region. And the whole network adopts him as a son. And in the church, This is so-and-so, whoever it might be, male or female. This is who she is. This is who he is. And the whole church adopts them in that identity. Yeah? Ceremony of adoption. It's about maturity. At some point, everyone has to see who you are becoming and who you have become. Because everything with God is relational. Everything with God is relational. There's nothing worse than God has reinvented who you are, but the people around you don't see it. And so they relate to you how they knew you, not in the language or the mindset of who you have become. That's a really tough place to be in. When you're trying to be somebody that none of your friends actually see. And some of them are even thinking, aren't you getting a little bit above yourself? You know, it's typically British, tall poppy syndrome. Let's just cut that thing off, you know? Very important that we deal with each other relationally, and we're understanding people's story in the light of their journey, and we understand their journey in the light of their story. In a story, a person's character changes. In a story, their persona changes, their identity changes, and it's so important for someone's journey that we recognize what God is doing. I remember one of my mentors said to me one day, Graham, I think it's about time that you confess that you are a prophet. You've been in this story and on this journey now for 10 years. It's about time. And I said, but I'm not fully there yet. He said, no, but you are on the road, and you are in a chapter of life where there is a series of upgrades coming. You need to confess to people that you are a prophet. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. So I did a conference 800 miles away, and I stood up in a bunch of strangers, and I said, I just want you all to know that I'm a prophet. And they were going, yeah, cool, great dude, and all that kind of stuff, you know. I get back to my hotel room. As I'm walking in the door, the phone rings. And it's Arthur, and I pick it up, and he said, what the heck was that? I said, what? He said, what you did on the stage this morning. I said, how do you know? Who told you? Who do you think? Dude, that's cheating. I have to cheat where you're concerned. God says that doesn't count. Sticks the phone down. Little rat. That doesn't count. So I have to come back, and when I get back home, he calls me up and he said, what's the next event you're doing in your community? I said, in a couple of weeks. He said, I'm going to be there. And you have to do the prophet thing. Here's the thing. He knows how hard it is in your own community for other people to see you in the next version of yourself. So he sat on one side, and I stand up, and I'm as nervous as a cat. And I stand up, and I say, I just want you all to know that I am a prophet. There was absolute silence. And then someone started sniggering. And it was one of my friends. And then other people going, yeah, right, whatever, you know. And it was just like, it was supremely negative. And so he stands up and just starts clapping. About time we had a prophet round here, starts clapping and won't stop clapping. And then one by one, people start standing up and clapping. And he changed the atmosphere through clapping. And then the guy who sniggered came up to me in the break and he said, man, I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize what was happening. I was dumb. I am so sorry. I apologize. And whatever help you need to be a prophet, I'm in. And he actually became my armor bearer for the next 2 or 3 years. He stood with me, went with me on events, just ran the book table, carried a bag, whatever, chatted to me, bought me coffee, just with me. Because, you know, he said, I want to be in on the ground floor of what God is doing with you. You know, the church has a word for that. It's called fellowship. It's called friendship. It's called relationship. And you'll have noticed that that's actually 3 words. Whatever. It's what we do for people that we love. We see them not just in terms of who they are, but we must see them in terms of who they are becoming. So important that you have present, future relationships with all the people that you love. Because God has a present, future relationship with you. He loves who you are right now, and He loves who you're becoming. And He loves the fact that your story is going to change, and there's going to be another chapter, and it's going to be brilliant. Or maybe, I actually think there are some people in this room this morning who are not on a new chapter. You just started a new book. Where are you? Come on, show me that hand. I'm going to do my Billy Graham thing again. I see that hand. Yeah, you're in a new book. God's making all things new. And your new book is going to be completely different from the old book. And the old book, when you look at it, it has been a trial and so on and so forth. It has been a trial. It has been difficult. It has been almost impossible. It has been abusive. It's been destructive. The enemy's had his way and so on, and you've lost your way a few times. Anybody been in that kind of book? Yeah, some of you maybe need to think about writing a new book. So maybe why don't we just agree, let's make this weekend a new book. And why don't you go out and actually buy a new journal? Yeah? And why don't you not go through the old book and see what are the lessons that you've learned and put those in the new book. And once you've extracted the gold, the precious from the worthless in the old book, why don't you burn the old book? Why don't you invite all your friends to come, open up a bottle of wine if you're vaguely European, or just make some decent coffee and have a book burning session and say, this is my new book, this is my new story, this is my new journey, because God's going to make all things new. Yeah? And now in this new story, everything between me and God is relational. Yeah? In my new story, I am Mary becoming like Jesus, and I'm Martha portraying what that looks like. Yeah? So I'm going to learn my new life in a new way, and I'm not taking any of the old stuff into this new book. It's a completely different book. That old book was the end of an old man series. This new book is the beginning of a new man series. Yeah? So who am I becoming? What is this for? What does this mean? What must I do? Those are two great questions you take into everything. What is it that you want to be for me now that you couldn't be at any other time? And God's going to ask you questions from time to time. A question he and I have been working on for the last 5 years. He asked it me 5 years ago. And we have brilliant conversations with it all the time. And the question is so big, I had to start a new book just so I could start to have a whole new dialogue with God. So I have this, I call it my magnificent book. Because the question is this from God. One day He said, Graham. And when He says my name in a certain way, I've learned, and my heart leaps because I know that something momentous is about to happen. So I feel the affection, and I love the way He says my name in about a dozen different ways. And each one of them has meaning for me. This one is like, Graham. And it's like, my ears prick up, my heart is on full alert. And He says, I have a question. Alrighty. And it's like, position yourself, get ready. And He said, what would it take for you to believe that I'm unceasingly magnificent towards you? We're still talking about that. But you know what happened? My frame went from this big to this big. My mindset just like went into a whole different place. I'm thinking, oh my God, I think I just crossed the Jordan. I'm in this whole space. I feel like Lewis and Clark. In fact, my friends have started calling me, some of my friends call me Clarky, other of my friends call me Lou. You know? So, Clarky, what's going on in this whole new country of yours? Because this is what I feel I'm in. What would it take for you to believe that I'm unceasingly magnificent towards you? What would that take? And we're in this place, we're having this fabulous conversation. And what's happening is my astonishment is growing. My admiration for the Holy Spirit is off the chart. And my love of who God is and my love of who I'm becoming in him are increasing and upgrading all the time. Great question, designed to put you into a big country, and then God's going to fill that country up. And so what am I doing right now? I'm exploring a whole new place of relationship. And God, with that question, has reinvented my relationship with him. So you're being reinvented. That's why you're here right now. It's why you're listening to this thing right now. It's because you're being reinvented. And so the Lord is saying to you, this is who I want to be for you. This is who you get to be for me. Welcome to the new man. Welcome to the kingdom. This is what it looks like.